Welcome back to Trailmakers with Fenrir. Today we're going to be taking a look at the top 10 planes from my current Air Force, representing the best that I have in the skies in a couple of different manners. From straightforward fighters, like the Black Cat over here, packed with logic for efficiencies, to a dedicated missile bomber with full autopilot systems, to more rounded and versatile machines, like the Midnight over here. Now all of these planes are completely thrust vectoring, non-gyro, although the missiles each have one gyro for roll stabilization in them. I still haven't engineered that out quite yet, but without further ado, let's get into it. So to start us off, we have the Kitten Jet Mark 15B4, the Sunrise, which is the large VTOL on this list. Now, at a quick glance, it doesn't look like anything special, which is pretty common for most of my planes, because they're all about the functionality. So if we pop it open into build mode, the first thing you can see is that it has a little bit of a piston glitch going on, mainly for the weapons bay in the cockpit here. And we couldn't do the whole plane like I do with most of them, because we have articulated thrusters throughout the body. If I crack it open a little bit to show you. I'm taking advantage of the new small servo joints because they move much faster, so it toggles into VTOL mode much quicker than using the hinges did. But all of the thrusters in the body can toggle downwards, including these two at the tail near the maneuvering thrusters, which handle pitch, roll, and yaw for thrust vectoring. I'm going to leave that in there, that's funny. Anyways, we'll make sure to put those panels back. And for weaponry, we have variable firepower in that we can toggle on and off how many pairs of smart cannons we have active. And we also have logic for the rockets that allows us to fire just 2 at a time with a single button, and then it switches immediately over to the other one, readying them up. And we also, because this is another logic-packed jet, well, I say another, this is the first one on the list, isn't it? But we have 5 maneuvering modes, shown by the lower light here. And what this is doing is changing the maximum angle and sensitivity of all our maneuvering surfaces and thrust vectoring. So you can see right now it's pretty subtle, but, oh, that's the VTOL mode. If we crank it up to the middle, we get a larger range of motion, and if I hold all the way down, you can see it actually clicks into place as the maximum angle gets increased. You can see our little colored indicator here going each time. And it's a 5-stage cycle. It's all on one button press, and it loops around to the beginning of the cycle again when you finish it off. And the same thing with the guns. So there's 3 different settings for them. So we've got, what is it again? Blue is 1, green is 2, and orange is all 3. And then the rockets fire the 1 pair on the first press, fire the second pair on the second press, and I'll let them both recharge, show that you can fire them as quickly together as you can press your little finger on the trigger button. And I don't think there's much more to explain about this plane, so let's probably fly it, right? Let's click it into VTOL mode and get into a proper camera. And you can see we lift off pretty well. We've got a lot of lifting force. It doesn't struggle to hold itself up or anything like that, which is good because it does have a decent amount of armor on it. I don't know if YouTube's compression lets you notice, but the entire plane, except for the wings and control surfaces, is coated in 2x1 shield panels because they have a lot of bullet health per volume. Now right now we're in medium maneuvering mode, which is ideal for VTOL because it gives us enough thrust vectoring to really control ourselves, but not so much that we get too wobbly. Then we can switch into forward mode, which is not as well balanced. You can see we kind of rear it up a little bit there. But we'll switch it all the way to maximum maneuvering mode to show you its full capabilities. We've got good pitch and roll and yaw and everything. Oh, its recovery is a little sluggish though, compared to what I'm used to with the other models. So that's why I just kind of spun myself out and didn't recover in time there. But here we are in the lowest maneuvering setting again. So you can see I'm slamming the controls now in low maneuvering mode, and it's barely doing anything. And now we'll dial it up all the way. And we've got a lot more force. You get the idea, right? But anyways, I think it might be time to move on to the next plane. Because a lot of these systems are shared throughout planes, it will go faster with each successive one up until the end where they get a little bit more unique, so to say. Oh, and I almost forgot. All of these planes meow. Most of them are called the kitten jet this, that, or the other thing. Well, all the line of fighter jets are the kitten jets, and then there's the one missile bomber that breaks the mold on that naming convention. But even that one meows. Yeah, so now we can move on. And next up, we've got a little guy, the Mark 15C3 Night Sprite. Now I'm looking at it here outside of build mode first, just to give you the visual perspective. Now, we've got a couple little things that look like they're for show, but that's actually there to protect the thruster from getting shot in the butt. It doesn't provide much bullet health, but it does provide a little bit of a buffer. Everything has a purpose on these planes. But if we pull it up into build mode, you'll see that this is our fastest plane on the list, because it's the only zero-drag one. I only use the zero-drag glitch now and again, because I don't actually enjoy flying all that fast, so I don't use them very often. But this one is fully zero-dragged. There's only a couple spots that have some inefficiencies to it. And that's mostly just because of the build structure, the piston glitch, and things like that, which I'm glad that I kept the coloring different for the pieces that break away. Now, in terms of structure, we got a couple things I want to point out. Unlike the other one, we have the full-size piston glitch, so we have doubled-up layer of armor. We've got the sheet of armor on top, and then that layers in with the layer of armor down here. So there's two layers before you get to the thrusters, which is good because there's not really any blocks or fuselage in the way of anything. It's all very exposed, and most of the structure is actually logic pieces. Well, maybe not most of the structure, but a lot of the structure. And we've got 4 smart cannons broken up into 2 pairs, and we just have the one set of rockets, so we don't have any fancy logic there. And I think that's all about it in build mode that I need to say. We also have the adjustable maneuvering mode, except this one has an analog. Instead of being broken up into 5 stages, let's get a good camera mode and view on the lights. You can see the lights gradually change color on the tail. I'll probably zoom in and post. And then if we go over here and pull up as hard as we can and start changing it, you can see it gradually increases the stopping point, the maximum angle. And it's not entirely up to date. I could use the new linear mode on the hinges to make the yaw thrust vectoring move faster, but that's a thought from the next upgrade. Let's get flying it though, because as a zero drag, it gets up and goes really fast. Let's turn down the maneuvering all the way so that we don't lose speed in our turns, which was the original purpose that I developed the variable angle system, was so that I could have more control at high speeds for the zero drag builds but still maintain all the flexibility and agility at lower speeds. Now, as you can see, we get up... it's slowing down as we get towards 1200. It doesn't really get much above 1200, especially not without running out of room and having to turn around. So it's definitely not the fastest plane in Trailmakers, but it's the fastest plane in my roster. We've got the two different firing modes, although it's probably hard to tell the difference between how many are firing. We still have the meow sound effect crammed into here. And let's see. Oh, the thing that I didn't mention about the sunrise is all these, well, not all. Actually, yes, I do think all the ones on the list have an air brake feature, where if you yaw in both directions at once, instead of the tail going to a neutral position, it spreads it completely open, and it spreads open to maximum angle regardless of what the maneuvering setting is, to give the maximum amount of slowing down force. This one needs it more than others, considering the speeds it goes, which is why it came to mind on this one and not the other one. But they all feature it. And you can see some of the logic there in the cockpit for our variable maneuvering modes. It's centered around this accumulator here, with the up and down controls. And then it does a bunch of math with the inputs and stuff like that to break up the signal. I think I've actually done a tutorial on it, and if I haven't, I'll probably do one. But I think it's time to move on from this plane, because we babbled enough about this one, and we gotta make each one go faster, or else we're not gonna have time for the really cool ones at the end. So next up, we have the Mark 15E Photon, and we'll be able to get through this fairly fast because the Mark 15s are all fairly similar enough. So you've seen the ins and outs of the logic systems that they have. This has the double rockets. It's got the variable firepower, although its main firepower is blasters on this one, hence the name Photon. Though if we peek in here, we do have a smart cannon, which is our primary fire mode. So we have 4 firing settings. Actually, no, we've got 2 smart cannons in there, don't we? Yeah, we've got 2 smart cannons for our main firing mode. And then as soon as we click it up, it adds 1 pair of blasters. We click it up again, then it has 2 pairs. And at full firing power, it'll melt your face off. And we have the variable angle settings for our control surfaces. And we have the doubled up rockets. And yeah, oh, actually, let's pull up in build mode, because without the zero drag in the way, it'll be easier to show off some of the armor stuff, especially since this is technically a little bit tougher because there's an extra layer of blocks in the way. So the top layer of armor here is the 2x1 panels, and as I mentioned before, I use them because they've got the most health per volume, for the purposes anyways. All the shield panel sizes have the same amount of health, so if you use smaller ones, it adds more health in a smaller area, and it's generally resulted in much sturdier planes. And because the wings on the top don't have an actual panel here, we don't have to worry about blocking the lift. We can even have a little bit of armor blocking this lift panel here. Because this plane, considering it has blasters, I only use it when people have already started using blasters on me. It needed all the armor it could get. Because the reason I have these variable firepower systems is I like to use equal to or under the firepower of my opponents to keep things fair. Sounds a little cocky now when I say it out loud, doesn't it? But I suppose I should fly this around just a little bit so I can show off its maximum flight capabilities. Now remember, these are all fully thrust vectoring non-gyro planes. but they can still do some ridiculous spin-in-place maneuvering. And that's the power of thrust vectoring. It's all the benefits of gyros, without any of the negatives, and without being cheesy, because thrust vectoring is a thing that real-world planes can do, and I don't know of any real-world planes that use gyros to maneuver themselves. Spaceships, I think, do, but that's different. They're not planes. But yeah, we can move on from the Photon, and we'll get through, what's next on the list? Whatever's on the list, we'll get through the next, like, 2 or 3 pretty quick. Next we have the Mark 15F, the Hummingbird, which is the lightweight VTOL. Now it does have this piston glitch up here, so we've got double layer of armor, despite its small size, and we have articulated thrusters in the body again, although this isn't recently updated, so it's still using steering hinges, which are probably on the normal steering mode, which makes them slower. But it's just for switching back and forth between VTOL modes, so it's not a big deal. And we have, like the Sunrise, we have 5 stages of maneuvering control. And the reason why they're broken up into stages for the VTOLs is just because of lack of buttons. Otherwise, I would have them in analog as well. So let's just fly it around a little bit. I've already talked all about the systems and explained the ins and outs of it. So you can see we've got very good balance in VTOL mode. And we'll shift to forward flight. And it's not quite as well balanced, but it's more balanced than the Sunrise was. It just wants to pitch up a little bit once it reaches full speed. And let's get into full strength maneuvering. Do a little front flip. It's not crazy maneuvering by any means, but this is just a little 46 power core plane, so it's not really meant to be a butt kicker. It's meant for fighting smaller, weaker targets. But yeah, like I said, we'll get through these ones pretty quick because this is just a smaller version of the Sunrise, more or less. And if the Hummingbird was a small version of the Sunrise, then this is a big version of the Photon. This is the Mark 15H Pulverizer, which has my highest firepower that I even would remotely consider using on a plane. It has a total of 8 blasters. I almost called them smart blasters. I suppose they are, because they got the auto-aim. And its primary fire, instead of being little smart cannons, is a pair of miniguns. And it has the doubled-up rockets as well. But what it does have to sacrifice is armor. So this is actually more of a glass cannon. It's got the damage output to the max, but it can't take quite as much. So it really has to get the strike first. But one noteworthy feature to point out here that hasn't popped up yet is that this one has piston glitches for the maneuvering thrusters as well, which, as you'll see once we get into the air... Oh, I knew I was going to botch that. Stupid ledge. I don't know if any logic got broken in there, so it's best to just repair. We'll put it up all the way to full maneuvering power. And you can see we've got, despite being a rather heavy plane, pretty good maneuvering forces. The weight of it just makes it a little bit slower to get going and stop different maneuvers. A little too much inertia. So I suppose it does have less armor, and it kind of balances that out. It's not that different. But yeah. We've got the miniguns, and then we can crank up the firepower to fully melt your face-off status. So when people have way too much firepower on their planes, I can pull this out and level the odds a little bit. It still depends on actually the succeeding in the maneuvering and everything like that to get the first strike out, or at least to get behind them. Because in the end, it doesn't really take crazy amounts of firepower to win the fight. It takes being able to outmaneuver the opponent. If you get behind them, it doesn't matter how much the difference in firepower is unless they can shoot backwards, which I suppose plenty of planes do. But let's move on, because now I'm just starting to babble. So next up we have the Mark 15I, the Shadowhawk, which is the first of the blade jets on the list, because this is when swords came out. Well, this wasn't my first sword plane, but this was my first dedicated sword plane. It doesn't have any fancy logic for maneuvering or firing modes, and it just has the 2 smart cannons, because it's all about the choppy. So the blades are off by default, even though last I checked there was a bug that made them still do damage in this state, at least for the when you first spawn in. It's just because that way I could time it out, and of course it glitched. So they come on in sequence. It's just a little satisfying thing. But yeah, the reason it got called the Shadowhawk is just because the kind of beak-like shape of those front blades. But compared to some of the earlier jets that I've been showing off, this has a little bit higher mobility and a little bit higher speed. Well, not higher than the Night Sprite, of course, but than the standard planes. And that's because being a dedicated, well, not dedicated melee, but primarily melee plane, you really gotta close that gap and get right up on your opponent. And maneuvering is extremely important because you've got to pull away at the last minute if you're in the wrong position, and make last minute adjustments if you aren't in the right position. And you know what I mean. You've probably seen the videos already of this thing in action, or some of the other blade jets in action. And I gotta say, blade jets are a lot of fun. If you haven't tried them out, make yourself a blade jet. But now, we can move on to some of the really cool stuff. So now that we're done with the Mark 15s, we're actually moving backwards in time a little bit to the Mark 13 M24. Well, technically not backwards, it's fully up to date. It's from Series 13, which is what I mean by much older, and it's the Model M from that series, but it's the 24th revision and alteration to the airframe. So the original plane is probably my most successful build overall, which is why it's been altered so many times instead of just being replaced outright. And this version is equipped with the Lancer Mark III amphibious missile, which is a thrust-vectoring aerodynamic hybrid, although it does have 1 gyro in it for roll stabilization. I haven't engineered that out yet because I'm lazy, and it was very, very wobbly the last time I did it with the aerodynamics, but I'll get there. This is the Mark III, and I'm only onto the Mark IV right now, so we'll get there. But anyways, this also has a limited fuel and ammo system to go along with the fact that you've got the 1 missile. We have, well, if we go into our camera view, you can see marked off we have 12 missiles, and we've got 50 seconds worth of gunfire. And we're on the ground, so it's immediately reloading. Let's start flying. You'll see when we fire a missile, and now the icon's being covered up because... Okay, it's a little squished, but it'll be above the icon. So you can see now we've got 11 rockets, and now 10. And then when we start firing the guns, it starts counting down second by second as we're using them. And it does disable the weapons when they run out of ammo. So we have, to get the job done, we've got the 1 missile to start with, 12 rockets, 50 seconds of gunfire, and when all else fails, we've got the blades. Now, I haven't gotten to that point yet, but I only recently built this plane, and no one too, what's the word I'm looking for? No one too effective has gone up against this plane yet. They've all been pretty weak opponents. But I'm looking forward to it. But anyways, let's get on with the missile. I'm going to turn off the blades, just in case there's a little tumble. But moments after the missile launches, the tail fins spread open into a nice little X. And you can see our thrusters wiggling on the back there. And it's more than capable of catching up to itself and killing itself. Which is how I've been practicing with these, considering I haven't been getting many good opponents. And there's dynamite in the front of the missile and the rear, and I blew up a little early, didn't I? Oh well. Also, you might have noticed, there's an autopilot system that takes effect once you go and launch the missile. There's also an autopilot for right-hand banking, which you can turn on before you launch the missile. I said right when it's clearly left-hand banking. I'm a little tired. But anyways, yeah. There's no straight autopilot because you eventually hit the edge of the map that way. And yeah. Here, I'll turn on the autopilot while the missile's still on, just to show you the difference in kind of the handling of the circle. I think it's a little bit of a tighter circle. And we'll go into our cockpit here. You can see we're gaining just the slightest bit of altitude while we've got the missile on. And then let's just ditch the missile. I forgot to cancel the holding pattern. The logic on this one can break if you leave one holding pattern on and then turn on the other one. So let's go ahead and launch the missile. And then without the missile, because of calibration differences, it still only rises a little tiny bit. And it's also calibrated for when it doesn't have the missile on it, so that it balances out the weight and drag to fly more or less evenly. It does rise a little bit without the missile, but that's fine, because that's only at full speed, like straight line pursuit speed. If you're making turns and everything, you're shedding enough speed that you're never quite going full, and then you're sitting more even. But anyways, I could keep babbling about this plane, but I'm going to move on, because technically I'm going to move on to babble about this plane. You'll see in a minute. Because we're taking a quick look at the Mark 13 M25, because it has the more up-to-date missile on it, the Mark 4 Lancer. Now it has a slight bit of zero drag at the tip, and it has more or less the same stuff going on for it, except it's no longer amphibious, which I just realized I forgot to show the amphibious version qualities of stupid controls. I forgot to show the amphibious qualities of the other one. So let's do that real quick before we get ahead of ourselves. So we'll just go ahead and dump the missile and dive on in. And you can see that underwater, we're obviously quite a bit slower. And I just heard damage, which means my there's no auto collision avoidance on my autopilot, so I think it just hit a rock. But yeah, it's got enough control and thrust to get itself back out of the water and to hunt down slower and less maneuverable things in the water, like proper style submarines and stuff like that. Really fast attack subs, they can get away. Now let's go see what's going on with our plane here and why we heard damage ticks. Well, it doesn't look like it hit anything. I don't know. No, it seems fine. I don't know why I heard damage ticks earlier. But yeah, that's I really should have been closer to the carrier when I did that. I'll cut this painful movement out. Never mind. I was going to hunt down the plane that I just released, but I'll just hunt down the plane that launches the missile itself when I show off the Narc 4. Because by ditching the underwater propellers, there's a lot less inertia on the missile. It maneuvers better and it's faster, even if I didn't have the zero drag nose cone on it. And what went wrong? What went wrong? Something went wrong. Why thing go wrong in the middle of? Okay. It just got stuck on the landing gear, that's all. It's a little bit of a tight fit because when I tried to shimmy the missile upwards, or not upwards, forwards a little bit, the piston glitch broke. So it has to be as far back as it is, which is basically touching the rear landing gear, hence it getting stuck sometimes. And as you can see, it's not wobbling nearly as much as the other one. Although I'm still struggling to catch up to my own plane because, again, talking and flying at the same time are not my strong suits, and I was both misaimed and blew up early there. But you get the idea. Next up, we had the Kittenjet Mark 14 D11 Black Cat, and just look at all of that text, because it's got a lot going on for it. It's a straightforward fighter, physically speaking, but it has pretty much all the logic systems that have been shown so far. It has the variable angles for its control surfaces and thrust vectoring. It's got the variable firepower, and it also has autopilot systems, as well as limited fuel. I almost said limited fuel and ammo. It's just the limited ammunition. I should put the limited fuel in here too, that'd be fun. Getting the complexity for it's going to be tough, because I've already been hitting the limit so hard, but I'm sure I could figure it out. Anyways, we've got a bunch of indicator lights on here, and some stuff in the back. So we have 12 pairs of rockets, and because we have variable firepower, it eats through the ammo at a variable rate. We have 150 seconds worth of ammunition at, oh, we're on a carrier, so it'll instantly be reloading itself. Let's switch to sticky camera, maybe? No? This one. This means a good view. So, in firing mode 1, we're only using one pair of smart cannons, and it eats through the ammo at 1 per second. If we toggle it up, you can see we're green now instead of blue for those rear lights. Now we're using 2 pairs, and it eats through 2 units of ammo per second. And then we switch it up to orange, and it eats through 3 units of ammo per second. So at full fire rate, it'll drain its ammunition in 50 seconds, but if you're conservative, it'll last for 150. And we have the analog control for our maneuvering thrusters, and I'm not even at full. Let's just crank it up all the way. Full capability for maneuvering on this plane is pretty excessive almost. So if you get up to speed, it's not that excessive. No, now that I'm really thinking about it. But it's one of my most maneuverable planes because it has the piston glitch on the maneuvering thrusters as well. So each side has 3 thrusters instead of just 2 like most of the earlier planes that I showed from the Mark 15 series. And let's see, oh, the autopilot, right. So to turn on the autopilot, first you use the air brake, then you tap up on the D-pad, and you can see we've got some blinking lights now, and that's indicating that we're in our straightforward mode. And as you can see, it doesn't hold it like dead level. It bounces back and forth a little bit, but I've judged by the altimeter that it's more or less perfect. It does sink a little bit, but there is a hard rebound about, I think I've got it set to 50 meters off the water surface. So if it does sink too low, if you really leave it a while, then, yeah, I'm trying to turn around so I don't hit the wall. Oh, come on. Now I really don't know which way is back home. I should have turned off the autopilot before trying to fight against it. That was dumb. Anyways, what was I about to say? Ah yes, the autopilot. So once it's in straight line mode, you can toggle on the yaw to turn it into one of the holding patterns. And again, it balances itself out so that it only loses a little bit of height, like only a little bit of height per, I don't know how long it takes to lose a meter actually. When it's in one of the holding turns, it's pretty stable. And if you go to the other side holding pattern, unlike the earlier autopilot system, does it break? No, it broke, didn't it? No, it didn't. No, it didn't. It's just taking a while to steady out, and the indicator is going weird. No, it's not. I only put the indicators on, like, probably an hour before I started recording this video, so that's how fresh this particular model of the plane is. I'm not familiar with my own indicator system yet, so it does blink both ways. Alright, so it doesn't break, unlike the earlier one. Goodness, that would have been embarrassing if I found out it broke in the middle of filming. But yeah. And then you can cancel. And wait. I don't know if I checked what happens if you cancel it while it's in a holding pattern. Okay, no, it does turn it off. And I hit the wall. But yeah, I already talked about most of the other systems, like the variable firepower and everything. So, all in all, I would say this is the most logic-packed jet that I have. And we have one more on the list, which is finally not a fighter jet. So to wrap things up, we have my missile bomber, which is currently tentatively nicknamed the Double Tap, because of its double payload. And right now it's equipped with the Mark II Lancers, which are amphibious like the Mark IIIs were, but the thrust vectoring is a lot lighter, so they're much less maneuverable. Well, not much less maneuverable, but it's noticeably less maneuverable. And this plane is fully equipped with an autopilot system, which is, it was a much more complicated endeavor than it turned out to be on the Black Cat. The Black Cat I did after this one, though, so I also had the benefit of, well, all the things that I learned along the way on this one. So this one doesn't have a straight line autopilot, and you can't turn on the autopilot until you fire a missile because well, that's just how it works. But when you fire a missile, it'll automatically go into a holding pattern on that side, as well as begin to compensate for the difference in weight and drag from the missile being uneven, because there'll be one on one side and one missing on the other. So as you can see, it starts turning pretty tight. And let's see, am I going to be able to catch up to it? I think so. Yeah, I believe technically I can pull it off, but I'll pull it off with the second missile. So now that we have that out of the way, we can turn autopilot on and off. And when we turn the autopilot off, you can see that our yaw flaps on this, here, I'll autopilot back on. So the yaw for the right is on for the autopilot right now, but when you turn it off, in order to compensate for the weight and drag of the missile there, the yaw opens up on the other side. And the thrusters, most of the thrusters are active on the missiles while they're on the plane. And it doesn't perfectly compensate for the offset payload, but it keeps it well within the ability to handle and maneuver. And then if we drop off this other missile, we'll go ahead and actually try to make a kill this time. Because without the missiles on there, it actually has, it's slower and has a larger turning circle, because it doesn't have that offset thrust giving it extra turn. So it was a lot easier to dial in the aim and catch up to it there. Now, if I come in real close to the water and let off a missile, the autopilot will immediately make the plane rear up away from it, because there's a hard stop to keep it from going too low, and there's also a hard stop at 1,000 meters to keep it from going too high, because the autopilot on this one's not dialed in quite as well. Depending on whether there's a missile left on it or not, it rises or falls ever so slightly. But yeah. This is my Mark II missile bomber, and the Mark II Lancer is attached to it. Bunch of twos with this one. Okay, there we are. Now I'm landing in. No, I'm messed it up. It is nice to know, though, that it makes for a challenging target when it's in a holding pattern, because that way it avoids getting shot down while I'm messing around hunting with the missiles. Okay, I feel like I've got it now. Oh, it just bucked up. Messed me up there, didn't it? I just can't quite nail it. I suppose I don't have to get a kill to close up the video, but I would like to. So here we go with the second one. And as you saw earlier, it's much easier to catch the plane when it doesn't have either missiles on it. Again, because of the offset thrust giving it extra speed and turning, it just makes for a faster, tighter circle, which is harder for these missiles to catch. Because these are only the Mark IIs, they're not quite as maneuverable. Okay, so I made a hit, but even the autopilot seems like it's still handling well. Oh. I almost took out the whole cockpit. I was gonna check and see if my altimeter was holding steady, but the whole floor is gone. Anyways, it does look like we're losing a little bit of altitude now. But I think the logic's all intact, so even if I force it down a little... Yeah. I just used the air control to push it down a little bit. And I think I must have reset it to like 100 meters or something like that, because it seems a lot higher than I... Yeah, I did. I was tired last night, I forgot. So it's set to 100 meters to rubber band off of for its lower threshold. And since it's still alive, I can show you the final feature. It has an autopilot for the what's it? Machine gun turret. That's the word I was looking for. So I forgot we were already in autopilot there. So that's actually because we're very offset. So if we go into the autopilot when we're not all damaged and stuff, you can see that when you're in the gunner's view, it does a slightly rising, but straight. I don't know why it took me so long to think of the word. Straightforward, not holding pattern, but just position, movement. It just goes straight. And because it's rising, eventually it'll rubber band downwards from 1,000 meters, but I don't think we're going to wait that long. So I'm just going to close out the video because I've probably... I haven't checked the recording timer. Hopefully I don't have to edit up too much. Anyways, that's about it for this video. If you liked what you saw, leave a comment, like and subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you in the next one. There we go, now it's rubber banding off its ceiling. You can see the thrust, the thing going there. Anyways, yeah, that's my Airforce. I hope to see you in the skies because I like shooting things down with these planes and I haven't had enough targets recently. Anyways, bye-bye now. PlayStation